Thank you for those of you on the phone, our members of media and the press, for your patience, and those of you who actually let us know that our audio wasn't working. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take it from the top, and appreciate everybody's patience in the matter. Just to introduce myself, my name is Chad Latz. I'm the president of the Global Digital Practice here at Cohen & Wolfe, and I'll be acting as our moderator and facilitator here today. We're here to talk about transforming pharma, new perspectives from today's digital leaders. This is a media roundtable offered to you by POZEN. And what we'll be talking about and talking to today are some of our industry top thought leaders in the digital space. We're going to want to hear some of their perspectives on transforming the pharmaceutical industry and how that's going to get shifted, and what is the role that digital and social media is playing in this. And as I mentioned, the discussion today is brought to you by POZEN. And POZEN is a progressive specialty pharmaceutical company. Currently has 2 products in the market that were partnered products, and is preparing for the launch of their 3rd product, where they control the commercial strategy. And we formed this digital advisory board of digital thought leaders, both within and outside the healthcare space, to help POZEN really progress their vision of creating a new pharma commercial model. So something that I think everybody here is really excited about. We wanted to give you an inside look at some of the thinking that's been happening with the Digital Advisory Board and with POZEN. And with that, I think I'll go ahead and introduce our team members. We'll go ahead and start on my left. We've got Liz Cermak, who's the Chief Commercial Officer at POZEN. We're also joined to her left by Bonin Bough, who's the Global Head of Digital over at PepsiCo, and prior to that, he was the Director of Global Interactive, Social Media and Emerging Technologies over at Weber Shandwick. We're also joined by Raj Amin, who's the Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of Healthy Nation. And prior to that, he was Vice President of Business Development over at N2 Broadband. And then, of course, we're also joined by Meredith Ressi, who's the President of Manhattan Research. And prior to Manhattan Research, she was the Chief Operating Officer over at Integrated Wellness Solutions. We're also pleased to be joined by Dr. Daniel Palestrant, Chief Executive Officer and founder of Cermak. And prior to that, he was the founder of Zygos Incorporated. And then finally, Marc Monseau, who is the principal of MDM Communications. And prior to that, he was the Director of Corporate Communications and Social Media over at Johnson & Johnson. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and dive into our agenda. I'm going to actually turn it over to Liz Cermak, who's going to talk to us a little bit about POZEN and a little bit about the Digital Advisory Board.
Thank you, Chad. It's great to be here. Thanks to everyone who has joined us today. This is pretty exciting times for us. As Chad said, POZEN is a small specialty pharmaceutical company. We are radically located in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, so certainly not the mecca of pharmaceutical locations. And we've been in business since 1996 and public in 2000. And during that period of time, we've developed 2 major products for 2 major pharmaceutical companies. We managed to get those products approved within a 2-year time span with only 30 employees. So transforming the pharmaceutical development model while making better medicines was a goal that POZEN has had for a number of years since it began its existence, and mission accomplished. And so as radical as it was to change the pharmaceutical development model by having only 30 employees and using external best-in-class resources, we're really applying that same philosophy as we're going forward. So our strategy has 3 components. 1, we want to continue to make better medicines that deliver benefits to customers. Number 2, we want to make them affordable and accessible at about $1 a day. And quoting Dr. C. Everett Koop, who was the Surgeon General, medicines don't work in people who don't take them. So it's very important for us to develop those medicines and have patients be able to buy them. It's a very important part of our strategy. And the 3rd piece, which is why we're here today, we want to engage with our customers in a very efficient but very meaningful way. And as we all know, the pharmaceutical model is changing. Healthcare is becoming much more digital. And we're in the unique position to be able to take advantage of that transformation and really build what that commercial strategy is going to look like. So we've organized the Digital Advisory Board with individuals from both inside and outside the industry because we believe that we can learn and leverage best-in-class customer engagement strategies and models from all of those industries and bring them to bear for POZEN and our commercial strategy. And at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is to deliver these better medicines in a cost-effective way. And we believe that by taking this strategy and this approach in our commercial model, that we will be able to do that. So we're thrilled to have organized this group and been working with you all for the last couple of months, and are thrilled to be here today to share with the rest of the world what it is that we're doing. So thank you.
Excited to be here.
Great. Well, you know, we've got a couple of short presentations, short thoughts from Meredith and Daniel, which we'll get into in a moment, and then we'll go into some deeper discussions. And at that point, we'll ask our members of the media to submit questions via chat. But what I'd like to do is go ahead and turn it over to Meredith, who's going to talk to us a little bit about that intersection of digital and pharma.
Great, thanks, Chad. What's been so exciting to me about working with POZEN is we work with a lot of pharma clients, and one of the biggest challenges they're facing right now is how do they adapt their commercialization model to account for where healthcare is today, because so many of the processes and approaches were developed in a world where healthcare was a very different place. So a few things that have changed. Number one, pharma has changed. There's been 25% fewer drug launches in the past decade. And many of the compounds that are in development are not blockbuster drugs. They're smaller molecules, which have a smaller target patient audience, so if you don't have those big blockbuster drugs, that sales approach of having a huge sales force or having a DTC ad on primetime television just isn't applicable. Additionally, the world of physicians have changed. Not only has healthcare technology adoption changed quite a bit over the past few years, as Daniel will talk about in a moment, but this current model was developed when other channels were not available to communicate with physicians, so that was really the only way to get in the door. Also, this idea of selling kind of during business hours or during office hours is completely at odds with the physician's life today. They're so much busier today. That's what we hear again and again. They're so crunched for time, and it's just not in line with answering the needs of today's physicians in their busy life. Another thing that's changed is that there's a really increase in the role of the patient. We've really moved, even in the past 10 years, away from physician-directed medicine toward a much more participatory medicine by virtue of a lot of these e-empowered consumers who are using the internet to educate themselves and take a much more proactive role in their healthcare decision-making. But that said, companies today, many pharma companies, are not set up to deal with that. They're used to one-way messaging to patients, and that's happening in a world where patients are accustomed to being able to tweet JetBlue and change their flight. And companies just aren't set up to be able to accommodate that. So, you know, certainly if you're still sending to an 800 number, you're not set up to kind of meet those engagement needs of patients today. So with all of these changes, we see that a lot of companies are really struggling to kind of work within their very cumbersome organizational structures to adapt to this new world, and also within their companies that it's always been done this way, and so they're not really able to, you know, the brave individuals who are trying are in many ways not kind of swimming against the tide within these companies. So I think POZEN's in a really enviable position of being able to step back and say, you know, how do you design a company and a commercial model that fits for the future of healthcare and the way it's been delivered? So it's been very exciting to work with you all. Thanks.
And before we actually move to some comments from Daniel, I'd like to actually ask our members of media if you could self-mute your phones. That would be great. I think we're getting a little bit of feedback over here on our end.
Lots of typing, which is a good
Lots of typing. That's right. That's right. So Daniel, would you like to share your thoughts about that intersection between pharma and digital?
So good morning, everyone, and once again, thank you, Chad and Liz, for the opportunity. It's been very exciting seeing what POZEN's doing here. At Meredith, as Meredith touched on, POZEN's in this unique opportunity to be able to take a step back and say, how would you do this? How would you do this differently? And I think that the urge to do that comes because we're at the intersection of two important trends that are starting to play out. The first of those trends are fundamental changes in the healthcare commercial model. We can all see this, we can all feel it happening around us. The second trend that's starting to play out is the social media trend. It's creating an entirely new model, entirely new means for interaction. Among physicians, what they're recognizing is that this creates the opportunity to really partner with their patients, to move away from sort of the classic Marcus Welby model of sort of a paternalistic style of medicine. This is your diagnosis and this is how I'm going to treat you, and in effect move from a patient-centric model to more of a consumer-centric model. Among industry, it's an opportunity to really leverage these technologies to a different type of commercial model where the various constituencies, be they the consumers or the physicians become partners in their care. And that's what's made me so excited to work with POZEN.
Thank you, Daniel. Well, we have some discussion topics that we're going to actually open up to the broader Digital Advisory Board here. And so at this point in time, I'd also like to ask our members of media to launch your chat boxes in your Adobe Connect, and feel free to type any questions that you'd like to direct to the Digital Advisory Board. We'll go ahead and get to some of those questions here in a moment. But why don't we go ahead and open with a topic. Marc, we'll kick this one over to you. What do you think is the single biggest challenge that digital technologies are placed to address inside the pharmaceutical industry right now?
Well, thank you. And I just want to also say thank you for having me here this morning, and good morning to everyone. From what we've seen, the technologies and tools that are now available in the digital landscape are really enabling people, individuals, whether they be patients or physicians, to really redefine their relationships with established institutions, with organizations, with companies, with governments, and redefine them on their own terms, in that they're able to self-publish, they're able to interact with like-minded individuals, they're able to connect with them, and through that they're redefining these relationships, being more empowered to drive and make their own decisions. That presents an awful lot of opportunity, but also for a pharma company, for any company in that space. But it also requires that company to start to move from a inside-out perspective, where they're taking and pushing their own messages out to the outside world, to one where they're taking comments and information in and reacting accordingly. The digital technologies enable the companies themselves to really start to engage in people's lives on their own terms. But that, of course, also requires the companies themselves to kind of change their models and change what they need to be able to do. Unfortunately, I think traditionally the pharmaceutical company model has been one where it's not particularly consumer-centric. It's one in which it really has been much more of a formal, carefully vetted communications process that either goes to physicians or to the consumer base. There needs to be kind of a redefining of that. And one of the nice opportunities about being part of this advisory board is we're able to work with POZEN as they're trying to come up with that new formula, but also to start to identify new approaches from a digital perspective that will enable them to reach those customers in new and exciting ways.
Marc, you touched on an interesting point, which is the common ground between what you said and what I heard Meredith say, which is we tend to focus on the technologies and the companies, the Facebooks, the Twitters, and yet at its core what this is, it's a cultural shift that needs to happen in these companies. And increasingly we're seeing the success and the failures and who's winning and who's losing based on which organizations are able to change their culture to adapt to this.
Yeah, Daniel, I think you're absolutely right with that. At the end of the day, the biggest hurdle is not necessarily figuring out which is the right platform, but it's really being able to dedicate the resources, to create the processes, create the structure internally to be able to engage in that space effectively.
That's great. Actually, before we go to the next discussion topic, I'll just remind our participants from media again, if you could please mute your lines, that would be greatly appreciated. I think we're getting some background conversations and the like, so thank you so much.